Back to the Future is one of the most famous time travel films. The first part of the franchise premiered almost 40 years ago, but it still has fans worldwide. However, we are willing to bet that not all fans of the adventures of Marty McFly have noticed some small details of the film, although they dramatically affect the plot. And that's what we want to talk about today on About Movies. How did a bottle of whiskey save Doc's life? Did George McFly know that Marty was his son? And what secrets does Delorean keep? You'll know it in a few moments. And before that, we advise you to click on the subscription button and the bell, because on our channel, you will find the most interesting theories and analyses of your favorite film franchises. Subscribe, and let's get started. Back to the Future is an incredibly accurate masterpiece. Every little thing matters in it. Every dialogue and every event leads to something or depends on something. We saw the events of 1985 and then understood what led to them. We observed the events of the past and then we saw the result of all the events in the future. For example, we saw Principal Strickland telling Marty that his father was a blockhead, and then we are shown that his father actually was a blockhead. Biff bullied George in 1985, then we found out how it all started in 1955. Lorraine told Marty that she wasn't like that at his age. Then we found out she was even worse. Twin Pines Mall turned into Lone Pine Mall. The cornice that Doc broke off in 1955 was broken in 1985 and 2015. Goldie Wilson was mayor of the city in 1985, and we saw him as an enthusiastic guy in 1955. And the local homeless Red turned out to have been the previous mayor of Hill Valley. The script was written for all three films at once for the most part, and because of that, we saw such a strong interweaving of the story. Gale and Zemeckis did a great job. The story is complete. There is not a single extra detail in it. Every dialogue and every character's interactions led to something. There is a set.
We have to eat this cake by ourselves. Your Uncle Joey didn't make parole again.
And there is a solution.
So you're my Uncle Joey. Better get used to these bars, kid.
But there are moments that at first glance are not a set or resolution. If you pay special attention to them, you will find that they have a huge impact on the plot. Throughout the story, Doc convinced Marty and us as viewers that the time continuum was a very fragile thing, and even the smallest changes could lead to disastrous consequences. He said that the life of one person was nothing on a universal scale, and for the sake of maintaining the balance of the world, a person should not know his or her future in any way. So Marty wanted to tell Doc that he was going to be shot in the supermarket parking lot, but Doc didn't want to listen, lest he tore the fabric of reality and destroy the universe. However, after a few minutes, we found out that Doc taped together Marty's letter, read it, and survived.
Well, I figured, what the hell?
It may seem that Doc sacrificed his principles and decided to save his life by risking the fate of the universe, but that was not all the case. Doc has found evidence that the future can be changed without causing disaster. The event that saved his life was in that scene. Marty told Doc about how his father knocked out Biff with one punch, which he had never done before and never contradicted. Doc suddenly asked,
Ever? No, why? What's the matter? All right.
At that moment, Doc realized that the universe was not static as he thought, it was flexible. He realized that it was possible to change the past without destroying the space-time continuum when he saw the restored photograph of Marty and his brother and sister. You can see from Doc's face that at that moment an epiphany came to him. George saved Doc from death with his punch because after that, Doc taped together the letter, learned about the future danger, and put on a bulletproof vest in time. It was that punch, which was not present in the previous timeline, that caused Doc to rethink everything. But what made George punch Biff? Was it the desire to stand up for a girl? Actually, it wasn't the only thing. In the first movie, we saw George drinking a punch at the party. It's an American tradition at school parties to serve non-alcoholic punch. Another American tradition is to add alcohol to the punch. In the middle of the second part, in the episode where Marty tried to take away the almanac from Biff, you can see the scene where Biff's henchman poured a bottle of alcohol into the bowl. It was that punch that George sipped in the first film. He was so relaxed that he even lost track of time. Because of that, he was late and Biff was in the car instead of Marty.
Hey, you, get your damn hands off. Oh,
I think you got the wrong car, McFly.
Skinny nerd George probably never drank before that day, and so with a sudden urge of courage, he did what he wanted to do for a long time. However, despite George's feat, Marty continued to disappear. The photo attached to the guitar was almost empty. As Doc said in the third part, the photograph showed the events of the future flowing naturally from the events of the past. Only a person who knew in advance what would happen could change a photo. Only an extreme intervention could change the future. So what outside interference did keep Marty alive? After all, he played the guitar and did nothing. Doc was doing the wiring in the square. Who else knew in advance what would happen besides the two of them? The answer is simple. It is George. George went to the stage, closer to his only friend Marty when the red-haired guy drove him away. And what did he see when he approached the stage? His friend began to disappear. His hand became transparent. George, being a big fan of science fiction and at the same time being slightly drunk, immediately understood what was happening. Marty called him Dad 3 times during the film.
Hey, Dad! Dad! Yeah, but I've never picked a fight in my entire life.
Look, you're not gonna be picking a fight, Dad. Daddy-o.
Marty's transparent hand was the impetus for George, thanks to which he was able to put all the pieces of the puzzle together. He realized that Marty was his son. He realized that Lorraine was his future wife. That was nothing strange for a guy who believed in Darth Vader. He pushed the redhead away and kissed Lorraine, which saved Marty. If events had gone naturally, George would not have kissed Lorraine, and Marty's photo would have become completely blank. He drank the punch and knocked Biff out, but he wasn't confident enough yet. The vanishing hand was an external intervention that allowed the photograph to change. That's why George would later write a book called A Match Made in Space, with Marty in a radiation suit on the cover that brought a guy and a girl together. Do you like this theory? Do you agree that it has a right to exist? Write your opinion in the comments. And we are smoothly moving on to another question. Are there too many coincidences and fortunate set of circumstances in time travel that it cannot be otherwise? A person who goes into the past cannot perform an action that will not allow him to be born. Just like you cannot take an action that will not allow you to create a time machine. Why is the Delorean constantly stalling? After all, one of the greatest geniuses of our time worked on it. First, you need to answer the question, what would happen if the car did not stall? If it hadn't died out, Marty would have started a few seconds early and passed before the lightning struck, stuck in 1955, and created a bunch of paradoxes. If it hadn't died out when Marty first arrived in 1955, he wouldn't have hidden it behind a billboard. He would have taken it into the city, and the DeLorean driving around the streets of 1955 would have created a bunch of paradoxes. If it hadn't died out in the end of the film, Marty would have arrived before Doc was attacked by the Libyans, which would prevent Marty from going back in time, leading to a paradox. Probably the same flux capacitor that Doc created was guilty. The capacitor led to the fact that the engine did not start until the right moment came. A stable time loop could be created only in that way. The flux capacitor was a kind of protection against paradoxes. It did not allow the driver to harm himself in those situations where the car did not stall. Paradoxes arose that ultimately led to the fact that the car would not be invented, which meant that Marty did not go to the past and those events could not exist. Thus, only stable time frames remained. It's like time travel on the TV show Doctor Who. As the Doctor said, there are moments that you can change and there are moments that you cannot change, as they are fixed points, integral to reality itself. And one more question remains regarding the time machine and the flux capacitor. Why was it so drawn to November of 1955? Because that date was a huge center of temporary energy. 4 time machines were in the same city during that period. There was the car from Marty's first trip, the car in which Old Biff arrived, the car in which Marty arrived for the second time to correct what Old Biff had done, and the car in the mine that Doc hid in 1885. Moreover, the flux capacitor was struck by lightning twice in one night. Time here looked like a bolt of energy and attracted travelers. Everyone got a better life, except Biff thanks to a time machine, 2 enthusiasts, and a drop of alcohol. At first glance, however, if you look closely, you can see the logo on his car, Biff Car Trim. In the new reality, he turned into a nice and simple man who owned his own car restoration business. Many would prefer such a job to a banal sitting in an office, which Biff did before. At the beginning of the story, we saw that George did all the work for Biff. Since school, Biff has been unable to do his job, and he knew that very well. He lived in fear that one day George would quit and he would be on the street without a job and basic skills. Biff crashed into a dung truck while he was chasing Marty in 1955. He had to pay as much as $300 for repairs. He had no idea that it would be so expensive, so when he crashed into a dung truck after the second chase, he simply had no money left for repairs. He discovered his love for the business and repairing cars on his own. So Biff changed a job that he wasn't capable of doing and was fearful to own a small business he was good at, and that logo was added to the film for a reason as an Easter egg. The inscription on the matchbox changed from Pleasure Paradise to Auto Repair, to highlight the fact that Biff owned an auto repair shop when Marty changed the timeline from one where Biff was a millionaire to a normal timeline. And also, there was the answer to the question, why did Biff turn from a school bully to a normal guy? In the first film, he seemed to have changed after George punched him. However, in the second movie, we saw that even after being hit, he remained a vicious bully and tried to run over Marty with his Ford. The reason why he was changed is still there in his car. He enjoyed doing something to the machinery after clearing it of manure a second time. He opened a private business, and thanks to him, he learned to communicate with clients. Work turned the hooligan into a good-natured person who collected stickers. It can be assumed that being a millionaire and owning a huge corporation is much better because old Biff nevertheless attempted to change his life. Only when he returned from the past, rewriting history, he fell to the ground in terrible agony. It's very similar to what happened to Marty when George backed out and didn't kiss Lorraine. The reason for that was that in an alternate reality, a millionaire Biff simply did not live to old age, either ruined his health much earlier or was shot dead. In any case, his highly successful cosplay of Donald Trump did not turn out well. But he did not disappear instantly because in the end, the world moved to reality where he was alive at 77 years old. Therefore, he writhed in pain just like Marty, but ultimately did not die. And so it happened that thanks to alcohol, George hit Biff. Thanks to that blow, Doc survived, Clara did not fall into the canyon thanks to Doc, and Marty McFly Jr. did not go to prison. Is it possible to conclude that one bottle of alcohol saved several lives and improved the lives of others? It's impossible to say for sure, but people and their actions change fates. But the case, from time to time, the universe gives us a second chance. And by the way, you have a chance to learn a few theories about another, even more iconic franchise, Star Wars. Click on the icon that appears on your screen and be ready to be amazed. Some of these theories are completely insane, but others have a fairly convincing argument. Why did Kenobi hide Luke on his father's home planet? What secret does Chewbacca keep? And what is the secret of Han Solo's luck? Follow the link and watch. That's all for today. About Movies was with you. Like this video and see you soon. There are many more interesting things ahead.